You have it, sir. You've got the floor.
Thank you, Jim. Fellow Toastmasters, good to see you guys. Tonight, we're going to talk about how to create compelling stories. And I just want to start this out by telling you where this came from for me. You guys, some of you know my story. When I was 17 years old, my parents got a divorce. They both left and left me and my brother homeless. It was a difficult time for us. And at one point, I got a job on a construction site working for this guy who was a fireman. He worked with us during the days. He'd be in the fire station at night. And he came to me one day and he says, you seem depressed. And I was like, I don't think so. And he says, yeah, I think you are. He says, I'd like to take you to a Zig Ziglar seminar. Now, let me just check. How many people here have ever been to a Zig Ziglar seminar? Just Jim and I? Okay. If you get a chance, this guy is worth watching. But so he takes me to this seminar. We sit down. About probably 2 minutes into it, Zig Ziglar is telling his second story. By about 10 minutes into it, this guy has told 8, 9 different stories in a row, and I have been transported into a whole different world. I am completely blown away by how he's communicating. But some of those stories, I felt like they absolutely touched who I was. By the time I left that meeting, I had a different vision of who I could be in life, and I had a completely different way of thinking about where I was going. Now, let me just tell you how far this went. I went to the back and I said, I don't make enough money to buy any of your courses, because he was selling these courses for $49.95 and $200. And at that point, I was making about $2.50 an hour. But I said, I really do want to learn this stuff. So the guy gave me 3 free tickets. And for the next 3 nights in a row, I came back and listened to the exact same presentation. Zig Ziglar told all his stories in every one of them were memorized. They were perfect. They had a punchline at the end, or they delivered something powerful. And I would say that might have been the start of changing my life and the direction of everything I did after that. Now, let me just kind of walk you through some of the things we've learned about stories, both from that kind of experience, from all the training we've done, but also from working with screenwriters for the last 20 years. So today's purpose, I want us to master storytelling by taking these steps. I'm going to ask you to select a story. So start thinking right now, what's a story you're going to tell us? I'll ask you to select that story. You just choose any story. Doesn't matter what it is. And please know, it doesn't have to be the perfect story. Whatever story you choose, you're then going to use some of the processes I'm going to give you to elevate it. And then at the end, we will do basically table topics where you will get 1 to 2 minutes to tell your story using some of the techniques I'm about to give you. So let me just check. Would everybody be willing to do that? Nod yes if you would. Yeah, even you may. Come on, you can nod yes. This will be fun for you. And at the same time, it'll also give you some methods that you can use in the future. So first, selecting a story. There's a whole bunch of different places you can look in your life for stories. Every time Vivian speaks, she goes to a different story or a different series of stories. Could be events, right? You've been to hundreds of events in your life. You've had events. You got married, you graduated from schools, you had Christmases, you had family events, all kinds of things. You can look at any event and come up with a story. Could be experiences. What kind of experiences have you had? Now, if you think back in your life, very likely you've got tens of thousands of experiences. Some of them are interesting. Some of them are emotional. Some of them are gut-wrenching, right? Some of them are the best moments of your life. Just start thinking, what experience might you tell us about? Could also be a life-changing moment, right? When have you had one of those moments that changed your life? And that might be anything from something bad that happened that had you reevaluate completely. I had a moment where I went out of business on one business that I thought it was a certain way. And it took me about 6 months to learn the lesson that that experience was there to teach me, which brings us to our last form, which is a lesson. When has life taught you a lesson? And what value did it bring? Right? So let me give you a minute here, just a minute, to come up with at least one story that you'll tell. And I want to remind you on this, it doesn't have to be the perfect story. It doesn't have to be a great story, but try to go to something that's strong, right? Something, an event that meant something to you, an experience that you absolutely loved or you absolutely hated. A life change where your life has never been the same since, or a lesson that you will remember for the rest of your life. Try to find something like that. Now, let me give you a minute to do that. I'm going to set a timer. Everybody start writing down ideas, and you can brainstorm 5, 6 different ideas to come up with one that'll work for you. Ready, go. Keep brainstorming. Just keep looking for ideas until you can find one that you feel good about and you can have fun with. And if you can't think of one, just make one up. Just pretend that something major happened in your life, that you had some major life change, that you had some lesson. It's totally okay to tell a made up story. Because this is just practice. Okay, bring that to a close. And let me just check. How many people have a story you can tell? Raise your hand if you do. Excellent. All right, good. Cool. Okay, so second thing on this, when you're selecting a story, the question is, what am I trying to accomplish with it, right? This is your purpose for the story. So I want you to really start thinking, what could you accomplish with whatever story you came up with? So that might be, you could make a point, right? The whole purpose of your story might be to make a point. It might be to tell that lesson or something like that. It might be to inspire us or inspire the audience to do a certain thing. What would you be inspiring us to do? Right? At one point, Nadine inspired me to start roller skating. But I only made it for about 10 minutes, but it happened. It might be to generate an emotion. What emotion could you generate with this story? Right? Is there something you want to do? Do you want to get us excited about something? Do you want to have us feel for you? Do you want to have us worry? Do you want to have us come out feeling strong? Or it might be a frame for your main point, right? And this, sometimes the way you do it is you have an opening that is half of the story and leaves us kind of hanging and people in suspense, and then you come back at the very end and you finish the story now that we know, whatever the frame is behind it. So that story becomes an opening and an ending frame. So take just a moment. What could you be trying to accomplish with the story you've chosen to tell? And whatever that is, write it down real fast. Now, let me give you a couple of seconds to do that. And, a lot of times when I'm doing these kinds of things, if I'm like for training and that, I'll take the same story and tell it 5, 6 different ways, trying to figure out what am I trying to accomplish. And once I figure that out, then I pinpoint here are the exact things that we need to do. Let me just check. How many people have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish? Raise your hand if you do. Okay. How many people have no idea whatsoever? Okay. If you have no idea, let me just ask, and we'll just check with Nadine here, since she was kind enough to raise her hand. Is there a point you could make with the story that you have? Is there any kind of point you think you could make?
Well, it's an experience, an experience that I had in life traveling.
Okay.
And I feel like, I don't know. Yeah, I'll think about it. Do you want me to answer to it, or should I just answer that for myself?
Well, for the moment, you can hold on to it. If you had a
Okay.
unique experience traveling, you're going to share with us, right? And
Mhm.
what I would start doing is just start brainstorming. What might be the point, right? What might be the thing that you're trying to get to us? What what is it about that story that you think might relate to us or to help us in some way? Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you see any direction yet?
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
Okay, thank you. Good for you.
Thank you.
All right. Then it's about building the story. And let me just give you an incredibly simple framework that works so well for table topics, by the way. Uh, in any story, you have a beginning, a middle, and an ending, right? And so if we're talking about table topics, a lot of times people will just start talking, and it's like the table topics master will give them a prompt. Tell us about a time when things went bad in your life and then you learned something, right? To me, that automatically implies a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Just that question. Something was going on in my life, things went bad, and then I learned something from it, right? The beginning, the middle, the ending. If you recognize this, if you start going, okay, there's a beginning, middle, and ending, then the easiest way I think to think about this is the beginning is a setup. This sets up the story. You're going to say something or ask a question or do something that sets it up. Then the middle is actually the story, and the ending then is the payoff, right? So again, if we're thinking table topics, let's say Jim gives us this table topic. Tell us about a time that something changed in your life and you had a wonderful experience from it, whatever it was. Maybe I immediately think about this one moment where I met my wife. And it's like, okay, that's my story. Now then, how am I going to set that up? Right. And it's like, I could set it up in a bunch of different ways. One could be saying, everybody in here has had that one moment where you absolutely fell in love. Let me tell you about mine, kind of thing. Could be that. Could be asking people to, how many people in here have ever had a love at first sight moment, right? And you get people engaged that way. Or it could be saying something, very direct, very profound, or something like that. It's like there are 3 moments that will change a person's life forever. And now I go into my story and go from there. And then there's a payoff at the end. What was our purpose in doing this, right? What value am I giving this audience, or what perspective, or any of those kinds of things? Now, here's another way to think of it, and this is just filling it in. Your beginning could be a hook or a question, right? We've had lots of people who have done both of these when doing speeches or doing table topics. They just start out with a question: have you ever experienced X? Or they start out with a hook. My guess is there's no one in here who has had this exact experience. Now, by the way, that's kind of a provocative thing to say. People are going to listen to your story in a different way if you say that kind of thing, if you challenge the audience. But you're going to make the decision, right? And our job is to create stories that have an impact. The middle, of course, is pretty much always the story. The ending, when you're doing it this way, might be the moral of the story. What is the moral of the story? I've heard people even end them with, and the moral of the story is. This is the thing you want them to take away and to experience. So again, first thing, anytime you're going to tell any story, be thinking there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an ending. Now let's see where we're going to go with this. Changes to make it stronger. First thing is you change the setup and the payoff. You could take the exact same story and have it have a completely different impact or 10 different impacts if you use 10 different setups and payoffs, right? It's like I actually have stories that I have told in my training before that I have presented the same story like 6 different ways, because in this particular situation, the setup is different and the payoff I want them to get is different. But the story is still the same powerful story. Second, more emotion. So to make your story more emotional, you want to go to something emotional, right? This doesn't mean you have to get up there and experience the emotion, although that might help too. But loss creates an emotion. Betrayal creates an emotion. Anytime you're talking about deep needs that people have, creates an emotion, right? Anytime you're challenging those needs or expressing those needs, it creates an emotion for the audience, especially if they are things that everybody has experienced before. And then make it more interesting. And I'll give you a bunch of techniques for that in just a moment. But again, go back to this. We're mainly focusing on the setup and the payoff because you've got a story that's strong, that's interesting or compelling or made a difference in your life. Now, what can you do with it, right? So let me give you 5, and this is my new version of, I'm going to tell you 3 things. I learned it from Vivian. So I'm going to tell you 5 things here because Vivian asked me to, that will help you be able to create these. So the first method is you build it around a conflict, right? So let's go back to my Zig Ziglar story, and let's pretend for a moment that my boss forced me to go. And he told me I had to go to this thing or else I was going to lose my job. Now, a conflict, by the way, is there's a fight, a battle, an argument by 2 opposing sides. So I'm telling my boss I don't want to go. He's telling me I have to go. We go in and sit down in that thing, and I'm just pissed off as can be. I am absolutely not going to listen to a single thing. And by the 3rd story, Zig Ziglar had me. I'm now like going, wow, he's telling stories about my life, right? And it's like this. So I was using the conflict in that case as the setup. And then we would go to the payoff at the very end. Second possibility is you create more contrast. Now, contrast means you give a completely opposite setup and payoff, right? The more opposite, the better. And if you're trying to create contrast, what that does is that allows us to step into the story in one way. We all can remember a time that a boss was forcing us to do something we didn't want to do, right? So we're stepping in that way. And maybe I'm angry at the beginning. Maybe I'm not liking this. I'm having to sit next to this guy. I really don't care about anything. And by the end, I give him a hug and say, that completely changed my life. Thank you, right? That's contrast. Now, there's lots and lots of other ways to do that, but it's just an example. Or you could do a twist. And again, every one of these creates a different experience for the audience. So a twist starts this way. You set a direction and you're going a certain direction. And then you deviate from that direction in a surprising way. Let's go back to my Zig Ziglar story. My boss forces me to go. We get there, just as he sits down, I see a friend of mine. I say, hey, I'll be back in a minute. I have to go to the bathroom. I go meet the friend. We get high together because I'm 17, 18 years old at that point. We get high together. I'm stoned out of my mind. I come back, go to sit down with my boss. I can't even find the chair. And finally, I get there and sit down. I'm not going to listen to a thing because I don't care. But something Zig Ziglar says just goes straight to my mind and my heart. And that story changes everything for me. So the setup, the direction in that case was the getting high thing and not listening. And the deviation was, oh my God, he changed my life in a surprising way. Okay. Or you increase the stakes. And here the question is, what will I or they lose, right? If this story doesn't go the right way, what do we lose? What's at stake here? Because when things are at stake, people listen in a different way, right? So in this case, let's say the whole, the thing happened. He invites me to Zig Ziglar, and let's say I'm not resisting. I really want to go, but I've got one problem. My girlfriend and I are right on the edge of breaking up, and we scheduled a date for tonight. And if I break that date, it may be the end of things. Now I've got a problem. I've got something that I've got to overcome. There are stakes there. I could lose my relationship at any time, but I'm choosing to do it because when my boss told me about this, I totally believed him. So that changes the story also. And then the last one is suspense. And we're going to work with these in just a minute. You guys are going to actually take a few minutes and write your story real fast, and that you're going to tell us in 1 to 2 minutes. But suspense means you promise an outcome and then delay the delivery, right? And this happens, by the way, in every movie you ever see. At some point, somebody says, oh my God, if we go in there, they'll kill us. But they choose to go in anyway. So they've promised an outcome. They're going to get killed. And then they're taking the steps to go in there. We're delaying the delivery because they're preparing for the fight. Now they're going in. Now they're stepping in. Now they're face to face. The gunfight happens, and we find out at the end whether or not the hero actually lived, right? So it's like that when you see a movie, but here it's pretty easy. It's like, let's say I started with the story with my boss sits me down and he says, you know what? He says, I believe in you. I believe you could accomplish something in your life, but I absolutely am convinced that you don't believe in yourself. So he's creating some stakes, right? And then he says, I want you to come to this thing with me, because there's one thing in here that will change your life. And I'm like, okay, what is that? And he says, no. He says, you're going to find it out while we're in the event. That one thing that's going to change your life. Now, what I have, if that was true and I believed him, I'm in suspense. I'm constantly looking for what that one thing is. And I may identify 5 things that I think could change my life. Or I may be searching the whole time and I still don't know what it is. And we may get to the very end and it's like, I haven't found it yet. And he's like, it's going to happen. Don't worry. And then we have the breakthrough. Okay. So this is what you're about to do. You're about to take your story and build at least one of these into it, right? Do your story as a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Put at least one of these, maybe more. You can use as many as you want. I've told stories before that have all 5 of these built into them. But I'm going to give you, let's give you 2 minutes to do this. And by the way, we need a timer. So do you guys want me to leave this up for a minute?
Yeah, Alan, can you leave it up while we're talking, maybe?
Yeah, if you want, sure. Nadine, did you just volunteer to be the timer?
Yeah, I can time. I'll
Excellent.
just should I just do the same thing we usually do? Like show green at a minute, then yellow at a minute and a half, and then red at 2 minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Excellent. So, okay, who would like to go first? Uh, good for you, ladies and gentlemen. Help me welcome to tell his story. Help me welcome Ash.
Hal, sorry, can you unshare your screen so we can
I
see him
can.
together?
Ash actually asked me to leave it up. Ash, what do you want on that?
Oh, sorry, never mind then.
Yeah, leave it up if you don't mind, so I can see this in here.
Okay, Ash wants to do it. Okay, all right. Let's do it that way, and then we'll pull it down after that. All right, off to you, Ash. Ready?
Gonna go. Okay. So in early 19th, or actually late 1970s, I was a college student, and I was pretty skinny. I was 5'7", maybe 5'6", 5'7", and believe it or not, I believe I was around 110 pounds, and a real skinny guy, and I was intimidated of obviously larger people. Most everybody else seemed to be larger than I was. I happened to sign up for a karate class, and I thought it was interesting. And it was all college students in the same university where I went to, and had 20,000 students, and some of them signed up. And they, after going through a few sessions, one of the final day of practicing, the instructor told us to spar. So we were practicing, we're going to spar. And okay, so you told people who they're going to spar with. And I go over to the person that I was supposed to be sparring with. And this guy is 6'2", and he's, I don't know, 200 something pounds. So I'm thinking to myself, there is no way. He's going to kill me, and there must be a mistake. It doesn't make any sense. I'll go back to the instructor, tell him, I think you made a mistake. Something is wrong in here. I think somebody else, I should be sparring somebody else. He said, no, you're going to be sparring him, and I'll tell you something. You get close. I know you're much shorter than him. When you get close to him, jump up. He's going to pull back because he's going to be so surprised. Get on his knees, grab his collar, and punch him in the face. And I say, okay, he's the instructor. Now I'm going to get killed, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to get beat up, and it's going to hurt real bad. Now, of course, we wore covers and everything else. I go in there, and I do that. Did what he told me, even though I wasn't going to go to there to begin with. To my surprise, and to his surprise, when he didn't expect me to jump at him because I was much shorter, much skinnier, and he was a big guy. He did actually lean back. Leaning back, yeah, he kind of bent his knee. I did exactly what the instructor told me. Jumped on his knee, grabbed his collar. This was a karate class, and it started not hitting hard or whatever, just maybe getting close to it. I started hitting. Well, I did not win that karate match or the spar. The guy did beat me, but I survived. I did not get hurt very bad. So what I learned from that were a few things. One was that there's no need to be intimidated by people larger than you are. People are all about the same size. Nobody's 10 feet tall. Hardly anybody's 3 feet tall. And you might not win, but you're not going to get hurt, and you'll survive. And the other thing I learned is that surprise is a very strong element when you're dealing with something like that. Thank you.
Well done. Let's give him a hand. Here, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. First, he used our structure. Well done. It was a story about something that changed his life. That was pretty cool. Clearly, he's got some conflict in there. He's intimidated, signed up for karate, and now he's going to have to fight with this 6'2" guy. There's some serious stakes there. There's also suspense. He said, he's going to kill me. And now we're wondering what's going to happen. big twist, punching the guy in the face, surprising him. And he had a moral at the end, which was, I survived and there's no need to be intimidated. Good job. Well done, Ash. Now that he did that, I think that was an excellent example to start out with. Does anybody want me to leave this up anymore, or should I take it down and let everybody
Take it down?
take it down? All right, taking it down. There we go. Okay, who's next?
I'll go next.
Let's go with Joan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Something saying audio. I don't know what's going on, but you all can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In 1987, I graduated from college, and I remember going on a job interview with the city of LA, upon which I still work for the city of LA right now. And my first job in the city of LA was working at Central Receiving Hospital. Before I tell you what that is, I went home to my mother and I said, "Oh my God, Mom, they have me working in a rehab hospital turned into an office building, and the file room used to be the city morgue." And prior to that, I had worked at Farrell's Ice Cream, where teenagers would give me 1 penny tips. I worked at Bullock's department store, and I sold children's shoes to in the Stride Right section. One of my first jobs was working at Pioneer Chicken, and I didn't have the luxury of being a cashier or a cook. I had to clean up and mop, which I didn't even do that at home. So you can imagine, but I needed to check. And I told my mother, I've graduated from college, I have my degree, and this position's in this old, dilapidated, used to be hospital. And my mom told me, you take the job nobody else wants. I had told her when I had gone on the interview, the guy that interviewed me, who is now my friend, his name was Scott DeYoung. He goes, nobody wants this job. It's in the Rampart district. There's drug dealers outside. There were literally needles on the ground before you entered the place. You could hear gunshots in the distance. Back then, it was pretty bad. He goes, why are you showing up? I said, because I need a job. And I looked at the place. I went on the interview. He walked me around the hospital. He goes, do you know what a central receiving hospital is? And I said, no. He said, back in the day, they had regular hospitals and they had emergency hospitals. So if there was an emergency, you went to this hospital and they would stabilize you. And when you were well enough, you could go to another hospital where you could recoup. And then he goes, do you know who Sirhan is? And I said, no, I should have known that because I was a college graduate, but I didn't know who he was. You go, Robert Kennedy died in this hospital. I'm like, what? Are you serious? He said, yeah, he got shot in LA and they brought his body here. Here is where he died. And Scott was so proud of that. He took me down to the morgue, which was the file room. And I'm sitting here and I can see all the old equipment. I don't know if anybody's been in a morgue, but they had turned it into an office building. So that day I got home, I had been going on interviews for weeks and I was still working in retail and I was still doing a part-time job at a restaurant. And now I'm a college graduate. I thought I was big time. I'm sick of these cruddy jobs. And I told my mother said, you take the job nobody else wants. She said, there's no bad jobs. Can you imagine if you went to work every day and nobody cleaned the toilets? Nobody emptied the trash? And the building engineers didn't keep the building up? She said, there's no bad jobs. The man told you nobody else wants the job because A, it's not glamorous. You're working in an old morgue and they need somebody there to do the job. My job as the administrator was to pay the contract bills, which I won't get into the whole contract and purchasing services thing, but that's what I had to do there. That was my first job out of college. And she said, take that job on and shine because nobody else wants it. And you're going to wear a lot of hats because remember, nobody else even wants to be there. So you're going to end up doing a whole lot of things for the city in this place. Long story short, that's what happened. I ended up learning purchasing services, contract administration, negotiating contracts, the city's process for hiring vendors, remodeling rooms, doing all kinds of things. And by the second year I was there, we had a lot of things going underway. I took another promotional exam, and at the age of 23, I had promoted again. I had only been with the city for 24 months. And so what I learned from that is although I wash dishes, mop floors, clean toilets, sewed shoes to bratty little kids, and all those jobs I had when I was in college, I came home to my mom all haughty saying, Mom, I'm a college graduate. I don't want to work there. And she said, that job will prepare you for every other job you get in life. You be grateful to have it and you shine. And that's just what I did. And that job helped me get the next job with the city. And those jobs, every job I ever had, every time I promoted, the skills and abilities that I learned from that very first job working at the city, wearing all those hats, helped me promote along the way. So the lesson is what my mom told me: take the job no one wants. It's your opportunity to shine, and it also gives you the experience that someone otherwise would not have gotten because they turned down the job.
Very good. Let's give her a hand. I want to point out a couple of things that Joan did really well, and then just one thought for improvement on that one. First, I loved you set it in a rehab hospital. This is an incredible story. Absolutely love that. And you actually were working in essentially the city morgue. This could easily turn into a ghost story, but excellent job. You actually use this one line. You take the job that nobody else wants. You used it in a couple of different ways. First, you used it in a way to create suspense, because you're going to be in this city morgue. It's like the worst, probably one of the worst places there is to work. And yet you're taking the worst job, even the job there that nobody wants. That creates suspense. You then, and then you came back at the end and you used it as the moral of the story. So that was well done. I liked your stakes, drug dealers, needles, gunshots, right? It's like the worst of the worst, those kinds of things. That's creates some stakes. We're worried about you. Love the interest technique you used of having us know that Robert Kennedy died in this hospital. So that was pretty cool. And then at the very end, you gave us a whole list of the things you learned from that. Here's the idea for improvement. What you do is use this, tell this story to yourself or on video or whatever, and then go back and cut out all the unnecessary details and the repeats, and you've got an incredibly powerful 2-minute story. You know what I mean? So this is, I love doing first drafts like that, where I, just add in all kinds of things and then come back and go, wait a minute, what is the part that really will make the difference? So very well done. Who's next?
You're
welcome. Let's go to Reggie.
Hello all. So today I'm going to talk about my excitement when I planned my trip towards Hawaii. The trip was planned a year before with a family, and we have excitement towards traveling to that place and seeing volcano and playing with water and then water pool and all the things. But all of a sudden, what happened is we have a trip of our family members wanted to go to India, and my son is traveling. So we planned earlier, but we are not able to make at that point. We have a dilemma whether we can make it as a family. This excitement program, the fun trip, it's going to jeopardize. We booked our tickets, but is it going to make it? Now, all of a sudden from my office, I have got a planned trip for going to Germany. I have to say no for that. I said, talk to my boss, say I cannot go. I have a planned vacation. I have to go to Hawaii. Then I had to bring my son back from India. He gone for a surgery. He's back from there. And then my wife and my daughter, she has exams. So the exams has to be off at that time. But luckily, she had exams are not there at that week, then we were able to go. Now, the advantage with that trip was for us, my son, the time difference was because India, there's 12-hour time difference, and then he's an opposite day, opposite side of the time schedule. and he cannot enjoy at that time because it's in the morning and in the night. Now we have their advantage with the Hawaii is plus 3 hours of time, so he can adjust while he can adjust some time for an opening. So that means he can adjust with the time lag and time differences. So that's where we are able to make it. Finally, all the things come in place, and we are able to go there. And the exciting part, the part is we are able to see the lava, the volcanic rock and volcanic lava by very close, maybe 1 mile away from that, and we could see that. That was one of the exciting part, and all of us enjoyed. Thank you, and back to you.
Cool. All right. Reggie, I like a bunch of different things you did here, but let's see. One of them was you actually set up 3 different conflicts, right? It's like family versus individual trips, Hawaii versus Germany. Can you even bring your son to Hawaii in this particular situation because he's in India, and then all the time differences. So that was pretty cool. We ended with an enjoyable vacation. There's 2 things I would recommend for you on this. Is the first one would be you opened by saying, I'm going to talk about my trip to Hawaii, basically. And okay. I'd like you to open less formally and more powerfully. So, how do you get people from 5 different countries to arrive at the same vacation place in the same time without jet lag, right? Or something that lures us in without saying, I'm going to talk about X. Because Vivian told me to stop doing that. Stop saying, I'm going to tell you 3 things. So that'll help. And then I want you to end with, when you're going to do something like this, end with something that's not just, and everything was okay. Right? End with this moment that changed everything or something like that, right? So, okay, who's next? Come on, everybody gets to do it. There we are. Santi.
Yes. Have you thought about, like while driving, have you thought the other driver is too slow? Maybe because they're watching a phone, or if they are driving too fast, maybe they are running late for a movie or something, or just getting mad at someone who is in the far right lane at a signal when they have to go straight. So, I used to get mad at these things, like small things, when I drive, like during a busy schedule. But many years back, like my kids were in preschool. So in the evening, I used to pick them up. And at one street, I had to take a ride. But then one or the other car used to be in the front who has to go straight. So I used to think that if they are going straight, why can't they be in the left lane so that people who are driving in the right lane can just take right? Why can't they just do that? But one day, like I had to go to a shopping mall, which is right next to the traffic signal. So it's right as soon as I cross the signal, it's just the right. So I cannot be in the left lane. So I had to be on the right lane, but I don't want to take right because it's just as soon as I cross the signal, it's just the right that I have to take. So at the time, I felt that, okay, maybe all these days, like the people who are in the far right lane, who are not taking right, maybe they are in the same situation that they just have to take a right just after the signal. So at that time, I realized it that, we should not be judging other people or just do not complain about anything because we don't know what the other person is going through, or if we can just put out like be empathetic, and we don't know what the other person is going through. That has given me at least the experience that I had made me not to judge anything. But even if I somebody doing something, I just don't complain or don't feel bad because I don't know what they are going through, and maybe it's just the right thing for them. So that's the lesson that I learned, and that really made a difference. Back to Mr.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Santi. Well, this one's interesting. Basically the problem that you're presenting is, can we turn right safely in a situation? And you did open by connecting with us with that. Have you ever looked at and wondered about the other driver going too fast, too slow, or driving dangerously? I think this is one of those ones where you could give us a specific situation that actually, was somewhat dangerous or something like that to amp it up. Love your moral at the very end. We should not judge others because we don't know what they're doing, or what they're going through. So that was really valuable. I think just if you're going to do this, I would be trying to find, how do I make it seem more dangerous or seem more dramatic, so that you just had a life-changing experience, basically. And sometimes this is how they happen, right? It's just you're thinking things and you change your mind. But if you're going to tell the story, I think it just needs to be more powerful that way. Okay, cool. Anybody else? Who's next? Actually, everybody else. Let's go with Nadine.
You have to unmute.
Sorry. Here we go. Back in 2015, I went to Kenya to film my thesis film from my film academy that I studied at. And when we did like a bunch of shooting in Kenya, and then when we went into the car to the airport, we were pretty much excited to go to the next part of the country. And one thing happened. We got into a traffic jam and the car got really slow. It was really warm. We had all the windows down because AC didn't work so well. And the car is left driven, kind of like in London. So no, right driven, I mean. So I sat behind the driver and someone talks to the driver. And then I look over to my friend who's in the front, who's on his phone, who starts screaming all of a sudden, "Oh, my phone!" And I see this hand reach for his phone and start to run. My friend is someone who cannot let go. And he was upset. He jumped out of the car. He ran behind this dude. And that dude, he was so built. I started getting nervous. And the weirdest thing is that I looked at everything and was eating, kind of like watching and eating. Anyways, the guy runs back to the car, runs around to the other side. I see my friend chasing him. And all of a sudden I hear a lot of noise and a lot of like people yelling and people starting to throw rocks at the dude who was running in Nairobi. And I think that the outside picture was like a white guy chasing a black guy in Nairobi. So the black guy must have done something really bad. And at some point they come back around. The black guy has a lot of wounds on his forehead. He was bleeding a lot. My friend was shaking. His fingers were, everyone was just really nervous and anxious. And where's the phone? Where's the phone? Tell me where the phone is, said my friend. And the guy was like, I don't know where it is. People were translating because they were speaking the native language. And it ended up, nobody knew where the phone was. So we thought, oh, maybe the other guy that talked to the taxi driver took the phone from the other guy because they were cooperating. Everything started to calm down a bit. They took the thief that was bleeding to the police. We went there too. And there was nobody was there at the police station. And then we thought, oh shoot, did they just fool us? Maybe they didn't take him to the police station. After a while of waiting, he showed up. He was still bleeding. He said he didn't have the phone. We weren't sure what happened. And after I went back to the car, sat down in the taxi, because everything was just stagnant. They're gonna keep him there forever until they figure out where the phone is. And the taxi driver remembers that he heard someone saying, oh, it slipped under the seat. So he looks under the seat and all of a sudden he finds the phone. Now, why am I telling you this? what I was thinking is, how crazy can people become over a thief stealing a phone because he's so desperate that he needs to do that to either survive in this country or live, and then basically start throwing stones at him to stop him, even like his own people in this country. And yeah, to just basically do these things just over a thing that really doesn't matter that much to us when you think about versus life or phone. Anyways, that is kind of where I'm going. I took a flight back home, and on the flight we were hoping that the guy was able to get some medical help, because a lot of times people also don't get that and then die from their problem, like from their wounds. Anyways, that's a very dark ending, but I'm trying to learn here. Back to you.
Excellent. All right, let's give her. Well done. Extremely interesting story. Wow, what an experience. I love it. You started out in the very beginning. You opened by, taking us to Kenya to film this thesis film. I thought that was interesting, right? It's taken us to this new and unique environment for most of us, I'd say. Then you take us to this story where the conflict was somebody stole your friend's phone and now he's chasing the thieves. The surprise was people started throwing rocks at the guy and damaging him. The stakes in that case were the phone, which is important to your friend, you guys' safety. This guy who's bleeding now and has all these, cuts on his face and his head and that kind of thing. The big twist, which I thought was interesting, was that the police station was empty, right? Nobody's there. That would be really weird. And then, of course, this becomes one of those ones where we find out later on, really, it was more innocent than we thought. The phone was underneath the seat. Everything was okay. And I especially loved the moral, basically. How crazy can people become when they're trying to stop something they think is bad? Well done. Good job, Nadine. Anybody else? This is your chance. We've got like 5 minutes.
Sure, I'll give you one.
There we go. Jim Kearney.
I'm sitting there looking at 200 plus people, and the only thing in my head is saying, fight, fight, fight. I know I'm gonna win. I took martial arts. I understood the mentality behind it. There was no way I was gonna fail. The IRS had a different thought. But I'm glad that I took this and I turned it into a whole bunch of fun. I went 8 years without paying taxes. And I did all sorts of different things because from the martial arts, you learn that when you're going into a fight, you need to be prepared. So before I took on these 200 people at the IRS, my thought process was, I have to protect myself before they do something. So I copyrighted my name. I transferred things out of my name to other places. There's just all sorts of different legal things that you do to protect yourself. So when they start sending you these notices, you get to have a little bit of fun with them. Every time they sent me a notice saying, you owe this much in tax, I would send them a copyright notice back saying, you're using my copyrighted property to get money. And that's illegal. And I gave them the sections and all the different things that are necessary to say, you can't do this. The final bill that I sent them before this whole thing just finished off, I sent them a bill for $22.5 million. Now, of course, they never paid me or anything like that, but I went 8 years without paying income tax, and it was a lot of fun. So if you guys ever want to try doing something out of the ordinary and have a lot of fun with it, take on 200 people in a single-handed fight and see what you can do. Back to you, sir.
Just a second.
Hey, this is not fair. We need to know the ending.
Wow.
Well,
How did you
Jim.
get out? How did you get out of debt?
I'm here.
Here's what I found.
I'm here. I didn't do anything illegal.
My
Okay, first, First, I have to say I love what Jim did in order to create so much interest that people at the end are demanding that he tell them the real story, right? It's like, all right, that's an amazing way to end things. Clearly, you created a lot of interest. Let me just point to a couple of things. So, from an interest perspective, in the very beginning, we got 200 people. They're yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." I knew I was going to win because I was a martial artist. It's like, all right, we are seeing you getting in the ring with somebody and having these 200 people watch while you either kick somebody's ass or you have your ass kicked, one of the two, right? Then the big twist there was the IRS had a different thought. And now we find out we're in a whole different world. So that was incredibly well done. The conflict in the situation, you have to protect yourself against the IRS. Really, the impossible goal was, how do you go 8 years without paying taxes and not end up in Leavenworth or some other place like that? You had a unique and very interesting strategy, the copywriting your name and sending them bills and all of those kinds of things. And then I like at the very end that you allowed us to demand the right to attend your class on how to beat the IRS. Well done, Jim. That was incredible. Listen, everybody. So thank you all for jumping in and trying this out. Take this model next time you're writing a speech and just generate some ideas for stories, and then pick one and create a setup and a payoff. Do those two, and then do everything you can to make them as interesting and as engaging as possible. I can't wait to hear your stories then. So with that, I'm going to return this back to Jim, who is the moderator who was opening things. Back to you, Jim. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. We have a training tab. It might be worthwhile taking your presentation and sticking it up in the training tab. If you want to.
I'm sorry. What? Oh, you're talking about the slides?
Yeah.
Okay.
That way, when people are trying to refer to stuff, they can actually go back to your slides and go through it.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to do that while you're talking about other things.
Well, you can email it to me and then I can put them up there for you if you want.
I might be able to just give me just a second here. Let me just go find it. Just a second.
Sure. All right. Did you guys enjoy that tonight? It was a fun training, wasn't it?
Yes.
For that, yeah.
So our next meeting is going to be next Tuesday, and it's going to be at the College of the Canyons. So I hope to see everybody there. It's going to be a regular club meeting. We already have 2 speakers. Are you guys
question?
okay?
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it at Charter College or College of the Canyons?
Charter College.
Charter College.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So I hope to see everybody. Yes, Nadine.
Joanne is going to be setting up. I'll be online. So,
Okay.
I'm rooting for Joanne. Joan, sorry, I'm always saying wrong.
Joanne, you're
Thanks.
gonna play Sergeant at Arms. Ooh, you get to open the meeting too.
Yeah, I got to study this week on how to do that.
No problem. Just give me a call. A piece of cake. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Riot, relax. It's only Toastmasters. Don't worry. You'll be fine. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and bring this meeting to a close. We can have a meeting after the meeting for those of you who want to stay and chat. Those of you who need to go, see you later. Stay well. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, Ash.
All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Jim, we're gonna have the club officers meeting. Can we have it?
That's Reggie's.
Can we have it? That's why I'm asking.
That's Reggie's call. Reggie's the club officer. You want me to stop recording? I'm sure there's a stop recording here somewhere.